Welcome into the Room for Improvement podcast. As always, I am Sebastian Posey. Sitting to my right is Josh Zavadil. Josh, how's it going?
Pretty well. I am always Josh Zavadil. I'm glad you had to clarify that you are always Sebastian Posey.
Well, you know, a part of it was I was trying not to say with me as always, and by doing that, I ended
Okay.
up saying I'm always because you got me self-conscious about that last week.
I enjoy excuses too.
Fine. Anyway, we are here. It is the Room for Improvement podcast, and we actually have a special guest with us today. We have Nick Goulis. Nick, how's it going?
It is going well, Sebastian. How are you?
I am doing wonderful.
I think I remember that
appreciate
from
you.
when Josh asked you, but, I had to make sure that I could get
Well,
the same response.
It's the pleasantries.
It is.
You have to exchange them every once in a while. Nick is a photojournalist here at WIAT 42. He is also the host of the Diving for Penalties podcast that you can find at WIAT.com, right with Room for Improvement. And we have him on the show today for a little World Cup talk. See, it's the summer. It's a great time of the year, but not necessarily for sports. Things are kind of wrapping up. The NBA will be done in a couple of weeks. Hockey's almost done for those of you who like hockey like me. Baseball hasn't hit the All-Star break yet, and football, they're just going into camp right now. But we are coming up to basically, I imagine, this isn't hyperbole when I say this, the biggest soccer event there is.
Yes, this is basically the biggest event in the world. Just
Okay.
because with soccer being such a world-renowned sport in everywhere but America for the most part, it's number one, and there's no wavering off of that. And so this is definitely draws the attention of literally the entire world, and it will be a spectacle. It always is. Brazil is hosting this year. They have 5 World Cup titles. They are the best nation as far as tradition is concerned. Italy comes a little close, but you've got Brazil's going to do a good job. Basically, it's going to be they'd passed the test on the facilities this past week. That was a big worry whether or not they were going to be able to actually play in these stadiums that they've been working on for 5-6 years. But they all passed, so everything's good. I think the nerves down there are starting to settle down with those in charge, but the protests have begun once again. We had this last summer with the Confederations Cup. The Confederations Cup is basically it's the primer for the World Cup. It lets the country is done every year prior to a World Cup in the host country, and it gives them a chance to just kind of go through the motions, get the understanding, get the feel of what a full tournament would be like.
Like a dry run.
Yeah, pretty much. And so there's 32 teams coming to the World Cup. The Confederations Cup has like 12, 16. So it's just enough to, get their feet wet and just make sure that all their operations are under control and that they can, have a year to fix things.
All right, cool. Well, this is America, so naturally most people here.
Somebody has disdain.
Apparently, I feel like all Josh wants to do today is just anything I say, just throw some jabs at me.
I'm just not a fan of the whole America thing.
It was not done out of seriousness.
I know. I'm just not a fan. Seriousness or not, it gets on my nerves.
Okay, so this is the United States of America.
Thank you. That is the name.
So naturally, most people, I imagine, will want to pull for the USA team. Something happened this week, though. They released the roster,
Which caught everybody by surprise. This was supposed to be aren't due until June 2nd, and the U.S. has 2 warm-up games before that, and a lot of people felt like they were going to have a chance to see all 30 players in camp before then, but Jurgen just said it was time. It was interesting, that's for sure.
So, actually, I didn't even think about that part of it, but obviously the biggest shock to come out of it, let alone the fact that it was thrown out of nowhere, was a name not on the list.
I
Yes.
did not make the World Cup roster. I am sorry, America.
Josh tried his hardest, kind of.
He's a great striker, does well in the air. He's a target forward.
Mhm.
So I mean, he could have poached a lot of goals, but it's disappointing that he'll be staying with us here in Birmingham.
Mm-hmm.
I understood like 6 of those words. I don't hide the fact I know very little of soccer, but I want to be invested in the World Cup. And the one name of USA soccer that I know was Landon Donovan, and he doesn't make the team.
Yeah.
Why is that?
There's a lot of things went into this. I think the best place to start would be his sabbatical from almost 2 years ago. He started the season saying he wanted to take a break from soccer, and so he didn't play for like the first 5 or 6 months, and then he was off the World Cup, or not the World Cup, just the national team roster for any time there were call-ups for almost a year after that, because Jurgen Klinsmann questioned his desire and passion for the game at his age. And a lot of people say that's where it started. But both sides, and by both sides I mean Landon and Jurgen Klinsmann, head coach of the U.S. men's national team, both said coming to this camp that Landon would have to fight for his spot. And a lot of people would just brush that off because he is the name. He's the all-time leading scorer. He's the only player in American history to get 50 goals and 50 assists. And he's not going to be there. And a lot of people felt like that regardless of his abilities, where he is with his game right now, he should be on that roster. He should have a chance to go to his 4th World Cup. He's got almost arguably the most iconic goal in American soccer history from last World Cup, that it felt like this is going to be his big send-off party. This was going to be it. And he didn't make the roster. And it's, you know, his story's big when Twitter goes into meltdown mode. It's not just a certain sect of Twitter goes into meltdown mode. The entire app, website, whatever your method of choice is, just disintegrated. And everyone's wondering, you know, there's a lot of people that were angry with this roster choice because they feel like Jurgen is looking towards the next World Cup in Russia in 4 years, because there's a lot of young guys on the roster. A lot of people are saying that the roster's young. The roster's not young. There's just a lot of people on the roster that are young, that don't have as many caps, which are appearances, for the national team. And so with Landon being left off, it's, you know, a lot of people are wondering, you know, how is this team going to perform? Will they perform well? And there's even a few that feel like they're mailing in a World Cup, which is just ridiculous. This is the biggest event in the sport. And yesterday was the Champions League final. That's quote-unquote the Super Bowl of soccer because it's done yearly. But this is the premier event worldwide. So you're not just going to throw it away because it comes every 4 years. And that's just – so it'll be interesting because not only during the tournament, but once the U.S. is eliminated, at what juncture they lose out of the tournament, because then a lot of people will start pointing fingers and making claims come whenever the U.S. comes home.
Well, the good news for them, the first group they're in, Group G, from what I understand, is probably going to be the easiest group ever, if I'm not correct on this. I mean, what? It's Germany, Portugal, and Ghana. That should be an easy.
Number 2, number 3, and number 22 in the world currently.
Oh, so the group of death thing is
real.
Is bad.
It's not an irony. It's not irony. No.
So what you're telling me is that the U.S. men's national team is a Ghana.
How long is appropriate time to just let dead air go on a bad joke on a podcast? I've only got 5 episodes under my belt, so I don't know how long is appropriate dead air time. I think we did well because holy cow.
Oh, I've been sitting on that one for approximately 8 minutes.
Should have kept sitting on it. Yeah, just talk about talk about. I hate that. I hate it. It happens.
He caught himself though.
A
lot of people don't catch themselves. So.
Well, what can you tell me? You just ranked them. You just ranked where these teams are. So Germany, Portugal, Ghana is going to make USA Ghana, from what Josh just said.
Yes. And it's not only the teams that are selected. There's a lot of history here with all 3 of these teams right now. In 2002, 2002 was basically the team that broke the mold for American soccer. And they went into the quarterfinals, lost 1-0 to Germany, and they played well. It's like they didn't outright lose that game for themselves. They got beat. But they just surprised everyone, and including this Portugal team from that year, because they beat them in group play, and that no one saw that coming. And very few people actually saw it because that tournament was in South Korea, and you had to get up at 3 a.m. to watch it. I mean, it was literally the only people that were going to watch those games were the purists. And so that's the history of Portugal. They're back in the group. There's the revenge factor that's been thrown around, but the roster turnover has been so much that there's really no one there. So they're coming in completely new on that end. Germany, Jurgen Klinsmann is German. He's won a World Cup. He's coached the German national team in 2006, and the U.S. actually beat Germany last summer. The only problem is Germany was playing their B- team, and America had their A+ team, and it was 4-3, thanks to a goalie mistake from their C keeper. So Germany is stacked, to put it lightly. There are guys, and it's not. And they're the Germanist of the Germanist. I mean, they are. Bastian Schweinsteiger is one of the guys. Is a name you need to know. He is going to just tear apart a lot of the midfield area. He's going to be. You'll see him going on both sides of the field. And then Ghana has just been the thorn in the U.S. national team side. They were in the same. They were in the same group in 2006 and kept the U.S. from advancing to the knockout stages, and they knocked out the U.S. in 2010 after they won the group. And so that's who the U.S. plays first. And there's a lot riding on this game because of how difficult all these teams are. They need to win that game against Ghana, because if you win your first game, it's 80% of the time you go through. And especially with Germany and Portugal coming up, the U.S. is going to need, I would say, at least you get 3 points for a win and 1 point for a tie. U.S. is going to need, if they got 6 points, it'd be incredible. But they need at least 5 for a fighting chance, which means their best chance is they need to tie Germany and Portugal and beat Ghana. If they do that, there's a good chance that they'd advance, because I find it hard to believe that, well, actually, that would make it impossible almost for anybody else to get above them if they draw Germany and Portugal, because I find it hard because they can't both win both their other games, because they're going to have to Germany and Portugal would have to play each other. So, yeah, Group G is where all eyes are on, not just in the United States but worldwide, because there's always that group of death in every tournament, and the U.S. found their way into it.
So, you broke down a little bit of how the group structure works. If this is the group of death, and obviously this is kind of the group a lot of people, at least especially here, will have interest. Is there another group you're particularly looking forward to watching? Is there, I think Brazil is what, Group A?
Yes, Brazil's in Group A. As the host nation, Group A, the host nation's always in Group A, and they always play the first match just because of pleasantries and all that stuff. For me, Group B stands out. There's Spain, the number 1 team of the world, the Netherlands, who have long been a very solid side. They actually made the tournament final. Spain and Netherlands was the tournament final in 2010. They're in the same group in this tournament. And then Chile's kind of a throwaway in that group, but then you have Australia, and I'd say Australia's my second favorite team just because of their nickname, the Socceroos. They're very and it's fun, but there's no question who's advancing from that group, but just that when Spain and the Netherlands face off in that group, that's gonna be a match to watch.
Okay, so another thing I truly don't get about World Cup, when they win this round, so let's say hypothetically USA somehow manages to get out of the group of death. Now, it's probably not going to happen, but we're playing the hypothetical game.
Well, they have a decent chance. It's not a great chance. It's really not even a good chance. But they have a decent chance, and like I said, it falls on that first game, really.
It sounded like you were about to talk yourself out of decent, too. It's not a great. It's not a good. Really, it's not even decent.
Yeah, I wasn't going to go as far as, wait, no, I don't know what I'm talking about. They don't have a chance. No, they have a chance, because you always have a chance taking the field. But just, getting out of this group is not going to be an easy task.
Well, hypothetically, if they did, what does the structure of it work? What do they go immediately into a different group? How does the structure work going forward after the first round of games?
Yeah. The group stages is a round robin, so everybody plays their group. There's 4 groups or 8 groups of 4, excuse me, and everybody plays each other. The top 2 advance, and it's based on their point total, and their goal differential is like the first tiebreaker and stuff like that. And so after that point, you get the top 2 from each group, and it goes into a bracket format. So this is, think of it after the group stages, they go to the Sweet 16. That's basically what this is. That's the best way to explain it. And it's like number 1 in Group A matches with like number 2 in Group D, and then they just kind of crisscross different areas on the bracket, and then from there they just play on. It's just bracket style all the way till the World Cup final.
So, let's say, I'll tell you what, you've already talked about Bastian
Schweinsteiger.
I should know this, being German. That name is basically John Smith in Germany. Who are some other guys you're really interested in seeing, and names maybe some people who, like me, who only knew one name going into this tournament, guys I can immediately start looking out for and watch?
Brazil actually really doesn't have, I mean, they've always had that one guy, that one striker, the one forward, the goal scorer, primary goal scorer basically, that you've always known, and this Brazil team really doesn't have that. Like, this is going to be the biggest, I guess, team that they've had in a while. There's not that one star. Your stars are the same in this tournament as they are on the club level. And Spain is going to have a lot of names that a lot of people would know, but they're not going to have the marquee name. That's actually one of them's in the group that America's in. Cristiano Ronaldo just won the Champions League yesterday with Real Madrid. Won the Ballon d'Or last year, the Golden Ball, best player in the world. He's won 2 with best player in the world with a little Argentine named Lionel Messi, who is basically just a wizard with the ball at his feet, and he's a guy that's definitely gonna turn a lot of heads. As far as your goalkeepers, usually draw there's a lot of people that follow them, and again, in the group that America's in, Germany's goalkeeper Manuel Neuer he's a little green, but he's also playing on what most people, despite Bayern Munich not making it to the Champions League final, consider the best club in the world. They won their domestic league this year with 7 games to go, and they just ran over everybody and then just said, you know what, forget the rest of the season. It doesn't really matter. But and as you can see, you're understanding where this group of death comes from now, with so many relevant names. But
I'm starting to feel more and more like that word decent probably should be thrown out then.
No, we're keeping it decent just because of blind allegiance, basically. But the team that, if you want to be that guy at your World Cup get-together, and, you want to have, that team, that dark horse team, Belgium is the team for you. And a lot of people have seen that really into soccer have seen them growing over the last couple years. And so, it's not that they're so much a dark horse anymore in the world of soccer, but just because of what they represent with as their country. They're young, they're fun to watch, and their history isn't really the greatest as a nation. But they've got a golden generation coming to this World Cup. Eden Hazard, he plays for my favorite club, Chelsea. Mauro Fellaini plays for Manchester United. Kevin De Bruyne played for Chelsea for a little bit as well. There's Christian Benteke. I don't know if he's even going to make it, is he?
Most likely not. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it was a 6-month recovery time.
And he's one of the best players in the English Premier League, and he's out of this tournament, but he's also a part of that squad. And then Thibaut Courtois is, yes.
Say what?
Thibaut Courtois is the keeper for Atletico Madrid, who was in the Champions League final last year, and he's another young gun, and he's also on the team. I mean, they just have this team of a bunch of players that you would recognize if you moderately follow soccer, but altogether they just don't have that ability yet, and so this is a big test for them. And yeah, that's, if you're looking for a second team to cheer for, that's a good one to hit your wagon to.
What about, I know when I grew up playing soccer and watching the World Cup, like I would cancel everything I was doing and just watch games until they ended, and it was glorious. But there was always a player or a country that was kind of like an underdog that surprised people. There's always that one country I would latch on to. Is there one for you? Not with the amazing, like Belgium, they're very talented and they're fun to watch, but just mine was always South Korea.
Maybe kind of like a Netherlands, because weren't they kind of an underdog for the 2010, or was that?
No.
No.
Were they not? Okay.
No,
I
they're-
just felt like I
they're-
remember like seeing the Netherlands made
they're-
it, and everyone's like, "Whoa."
They're legit.
Yeah.
They are legit.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was always South Korea because there's really no reason. I just latched onto them. Is there a team like that for you, or have you ever done that?
Not. I really don't have that second team. I mentioned Australia earlier. Australia's always just kind of been that team that is just like, it'd be fun if they won, just because they're that deep down underdog. They're teetering on the line of happy to be here.
Well, they had that breakout moment a couple World Cups ago when they scored their first World Cup goals
Right.
against Japan,
Mhm.
and that was a phenomenal moment. And that's when everybody was like, "Oh, the Socceroos!"
Exactly. That name. That name just draws you in. For me, this World Cup, truthfully, I think Uruguay kind of fits that bill because this team isn't as potent as they have been the last couple of years, just based on age and just filtration through the roster, and they've got a group that's not necessarily guaranteeing they make it out. They're in Group D. Italy's in that group. Italy is another one of those countries that you have the firepower, and they're also kind of down. But England's in their group, and England is a curious case for this World Cup because the birthplace of soccer. This is where everyone goes to play in England, but their own development of their own players isn't that great, and so everybody's watching to see how they perform. And then you also have Costa Rica, who's from the same region as the United States, and they don't go down easy. They're very resilient. And so Uruguay is going to be that team that could easily go from playing spoiler to making their way into the knockout stages. And I think they have two guys up front in Luis Suarez and
Cavani.
Edison Cavani. Both of these guys, they're preeminent scorers. Luis Suarez won the Golden Boot in the English Premier League this year, had over 30 goals on the season. So they're going to be able to score goals, but it's just a matter of can they make their way into the next round out of a group that's not difficult, but there's definitely substantial soccer in their opponents.
Just curious, because we always talk about in other sports like the home court advantage. With Brazil, which are, as you said, and even I knew this, that they were actually, at least the legacy of Brazil, they've been a very good team. Someone like me who knows very little of soccer, knowing that should tell you that that's a pretty big deal for them. With them hosting, is that something that's going to give them a bit of an advantage? I know the last few World Cups, the host nation doesn't win.
Right.
But I didn't know if that is something they look at as like, this is a huge feat for us, and it's going to give them a little leg up out on the what is it, the field.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's like an actual different term for it. But I'll
You
just
can
say
call it the
field.
pitch and be that, cool hip guy too.
I'm going to write that
As I'll
down.
say, I can't wait. Here's a line that you want to just throw out there to be that cool person. I can't wait for Belgium to hit the pitch. You're going to be that cool person at the water cooler talking World Cup soccer. But it's not so much for Brazil going to be a home field advantage as much as it is history on their side, just because no European nation has won a World Cup in South America. And so that would eliminate like 12 teams, because Europe provides the most squads for the World Cup. And so that's when you start looking at your Spain, your Germany, your Portugal, your Netherlands as, history says they have no chance in this tournament just because nobody's won on that continent from their continent. And it's, there is some home field advantage that you can get from playing in your own country, but soccer's just such a funny game that it's kind of like baseball, where it's good to play in front of your home crowd. You like the comfort, but at the end of the day, basically it all boils down to what happens between the lines. There's very few factors that happen in the stands that can really affect what happens on the field. Well, at least legally. And there's plenty of stuff you could do, but legally the stands don't have that much of an impact when it comes to the World Cup, mostly because it's they're trying to sell tickets to all the host country or all the countries as the host country. So it's not like they just hoard all the tickets for their matches. They're still trying to get all these dignitaries there, and then there's the general crowd that wants to maybe go see a game, and it's a lottery to get tickets here. So you really don't always have a choice for your tickets. You're kind of just handed a ticket to a game, and sometimes you just have to accept that. So it's not where you can, like a football game, where you can just pour 90,000 of your fans in the stadium and just completely drown everybody out. It's there is a little bit of advantage, but usually it's not enough of one to make that large of a difference, at least on the international level.
You mentioned something earlier, and I kind of wanted to hit on it, and I may butcher the name, so Josh, please don't laugh at me. Jurgen Klinsmann.
You got it.
Woohoo! That's the German blood in me. So it's a German who is the coach of the American team. How did that come about, especially if he was in charge of the German team in the 2006, which I actually believe it was in Germany.
That one was in Germany.
It was
yes.
in Germany. How did he come to be the head coach of the Americans?
Usually, very rarely does a head coach for a national team last beyond a World Cup. Usually they run in 4-year cycles. Jurgen Klinsmann already has a contract through 2018 because he's been handed the reins not only to coach this team, but to completely fix the American soccer system for developing talent. Because we've done it the same way that we do all our sports, but soccer's different. And like I mentioned earlier, Germany's got it right now. And he was part of that group that has developed it over there. And so after the 2006 World Cup, he was relieved of his duties, and the American coach at the time was Bob Bradley. His son Michael Bradley's on the team. He's the one that, when you're watching the American team, looks like Lord Voldemort. And he was let go after he survived the 2010 World Cup, much to the chagrin of a lot of fans. But halfway through, there was just this vision that was like 2.5 years to this World Cup, it just wasn't working, and it was just going to be something the same. So they made a rare change, and a lot of people wanted Jurgen Klinsmann after he was let go of Germany before they hired Bob Bradley. And so it was very public courting of him, and then he was turned down because he lives in the States. And so once again, they pursued him, and he signed on this time. And it's kind of this way with a lot of countries. You don't always have a coach that's from your country. You kind of just go for the best in the world that you can get. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, and it's just usually just kind of a merry-go-round. It's kind of like the NFL. You're going to get another chance.
Well, Nick, I really appreciate it. Josh, I'm sure does too, even though you know way more about this than I do. But my knowledge of soccer, I feel, has shot up exponentially from 0 to something. I
like something. Something's you can measure something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's more than nothing. If you want to continue listening to a bunch of great soccer information using even more soccer-y terms, you can catch Nick on his weekly podcast, the Diving for Penalties podcast, right here at WIT.com. And if they want to follow you on Twitter, how would they do that, Nick?
You can follow me on Twitter at Nick, there's no K, at Nick_Gulas. If you want to follow the podcast, that's at Yellow4Dive. Yellow for Dive is how you can keep up with us. Had a good show last week before Jurgen Klinsmann completely ruined it, but we have a lot to talk about coming up this week with the first send-off match coming up on Tuesday. So it'll be a good podcast coming up this week.
Well, I know I'm looking forward to it because the other voice on that is my co-host, Josh Zavadil. Josh, how can they find you on Twitter?
You can follow me on Twitter, but I don't advise it, at Joshua Zavadil.
If you do follow Josh, use the same advice that I told him like 7 years ago when he said I tweet too much. Follow more people.
Yep. Yep.
Well, I don't tweet as much as Josh, so if you want to follow me, it's at Sebastian Posey. And again, thank you for joining us for the Room for Improvement podcast, and we hope to have you here next week for more Room for Improvement.
Goodbye.